Hi everyone, this is the Jungler and welcome back to my Fire Emblem Echoes LTC playthrough. Today we're going to be starting Act 3, and Act 3 is a little bit different than the previous two acts in that we can choose which army we want to follow at first. So we can choose between Alm or Celica. In this playthrough we're going to be doing Alm's Act 3 first, and I would basically recommend this to anybody playing the game at this point. That's because of a mechanic called peddlers. There's two peddlers, one for each army in their respective villages with the forge. And the really cool thing about doing Alm's Act 3 first is after he finishes Act 3 and forges whatever he wanted to forge, because he has a lot of money, he gets around 6 gold marks and a bunch of silver. He can send anything that he's forged over to Celica's route, and Celica actually doesn't have very much money at all, so we can send a really expensive item like the 3-star killer bow, which Celica would have no chance in hell at forging otherwise, and let Celica use it for not only all of her Act 3, but also all of her Act 4, because after we finish Act 3 entirely, we're going to be starting Celica's Act 4 and finishing it basically all the way through. And once Celica's finished with her Act 4, we can send the killer bow back to Alm, so he gets to use it for all of his maps, and Celica gets to use it for basically all of her routes, so it works out really nicely there. But before we do anything with Alm, we have to do some map movement with Celica. What we're going to do is, it looks like we're going to fight her first battle, but we're actually not. We're just going to start the battle and open up the menu, and then click the exit command. And what this allows us to do is pop out on the other side, and means we can go to Seabound Shrine without fighting anything with Celica. And the reason we go to Seabound Shrine with Celica is because of a mechanic in Act 3 called map spawns. Map spawns are really annoying, generally, but they're random enemies that the bosses of each hideout, or whatever you want to call it, can summon, and we have to fight them, and obviously they cost turns, so we want to mitigate map spawns whenever we can. And what I found out is, once I finished Alm's 3-1, Desai spawned a paladin reinforcement, and if you don't know about Desai paladins, you're pretty lucky, because those things are really fucking annoying. It's one paladin and a bunch of really fast cavaliers that none of our units can one-round, so we really don't want to have to deal with them, and that's part of the reason we're doing Alm's route first. If we did Celica's route, we'd almost certainly have to fight multiple of them. So I want to showcase the route without fighting a Desai paladin spawn. They're just really annoying. And this Seabound Shrine trip that resets the map spawn RNG really only took like 1 minute and 30 seconds. So it's not super difficult to do. You could technically rig map spawns for like everything, but it would be super tedious, so I only do it around 2 to 3 times in this run. So now that we're finished with that little map spawn trick, we can do Alm's 3-1, which is actually a really tough map to complete in 3 turns. The main reason for that is because of the enemy witches. Witches teleport to your own units, but these witches start really far back, so we have to force them to teleport in order to route the map in 3 turns.
Just say the word.
We also have to fight 3 enemy knights on this map, one of which is a really strong boss knight. Even the generic knights, though, are really strong. They have a lot of attack, a lot of defense. They're really slow, so most of our units double them, but even then, they're going to be really difficult. We're going to have Gray deal with them because he 3-hit KOs them, which is actually a little bit more important than which is actually important compared to 4-hit KOing, but we'll see that later. So Gray is going to deal with the middle enemies, because he's really our best option. He has the best bulk combined with very good combat parameters with the lightning sword. He doesn't one-round KO anything, but that's okay. We can do stuff like have Cliff attack one of the soldiers on turn 1 so that Gray can finish him on enemy phase. Cliff also crits an archer on enemy phase here. Wasn't necessary because Python's job is to finish that archer off, but it does give Cliff some EXP, so that's not terrible. Clive is also dealing with Fernand's squad on the left. I gave him a speedwell so he could double all of these cavaliers, but it really wasn't necessary. The weird thing about these cavaliers is they don't have retreat AI, so we can actually kill them over multiple rounds of combat even if we leave them below half HP. I also turn wheel here to get a witch to teleport, and also to have the enemies move in a little bit more favorable direction so that they can't attack Cliff on turn 2 after he kills one of the soldiers. I also have Silky to provision here so that she can warp on turn 3, even if she gets attacked by a witch on turn 2, because we still want to leave that option open to the witches in case they want to teleport over to her, which we'll gladly take. We unfortunately have to get a witch kill with Alm, which is unfortunate because he doesn't need any EXP. We could have given it to someone else, but everyone else is kind of busy. Python is the only one I could really see giving it to. Or Claire, I guess. She doesn't really need EXP either. And Clive's going to attack this Arcanist who he crit kills. He doesn't need to do this because he could have just gotten healed by Faye, which he will get healed anyway. But instead of having to fight the Arcanist on turn 3 on player phase, he can instead fight something else, which is actually going to be relevant because a witch actually teleports over to him in this clear. Usually we would just have the witch teleport to someone else, but because Clive crit the Arcanist, it works out for him to be able to kill the witch on the next turn. We also use Thunderclap with Grey here on one of the knights. This is important because Thunderclap specifically does not double attack, and if we use the Lightning Sword just regularly, the knight would have gone into retreat AI, and we don't want that. We want the knight to suicide on Grey on this next turn here, so that's why Thunderclap is actually kind of nice here. It's a nice niche use of it if you don't want an enemy to go into healing AI, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately though, despite being on a forest, Grey actually dies here, gets hit by every enemy, so we'll have to turn wheel that. Though it's pretty reliable for him to dodge at least one of them, because they have less than 50 hit on him, and he has 3 chances to dodge, so it's overall not too bad. We also get the added benefit of the witch warping over. Unfortunately, warps over to Clive, but because Clive crit the Arcanist, he can actually take out the witch on turn 3, so that ends up working out for us. It's a little bit suspect, but we'll take whatever we can get. Witch AI is still not entirely understood, so even though it's a little bit weird, we'll kind of just take what we can get here. Clive finishes off Fernand on turn 2 here. If Clive didn't crit the Arcanist, the Arcanist would have healed Fernand, but that would have been okay because Clive would then have this turn to kill Fernand. Because, like I said, nothing in that Cavalier group actually has retreat AI, which is really weird, but we'll definitely take it. It's like one of the only enemy formations that doesn't have retreat AI, even though supply tiles are available. Zaxxon, the boss knight, is another reason this map is usually kind of floored at 4 turns, because you don't really have any way to 1-round KO them. But this is one of the reasons we grinded Tobin to Excalibur and Thief Shrine, because he's actually able to fairly reliably kill Zaxxon. He has around a 70% chance, factoring in 1 turn wheel, to kill Zaxxon, and then if we have any turn wheels left over, he can use those too to increase his odds of success, to Excalibur crit Zaxxon even more. Cliff and Grey will finish off the Knight and Soldier that Grey left on low HP. Unfortunately, Grey couldn't get that last level up there, but he will still promote in time anyway, so not a huge deal. And here is Tobin crit killing the boss here. And that is 3-1 completed in 3 turns. Tobin also picks up Swap, which will be useful in the next map. So pretty nice he gets to that there. The next map is Arcanist Forest, and this is a really tough map, probably Alm's hardest Act 3 map, because the Arcanists hit pretty hard. They're about as strong as the ones on Celica's boat map last act, but Alm's units don't have as good of resistance typically, and we also have to fight a lot of them dealing with forest terrain, and there's also 2 mire guys which are really strong. But on the first turn we're going to warp Cliff and use a swap with Tobin to get Grey in range of the Arcanist that Cliff weakens. This is a map where Myrmidon Cliff is quite a bit better than Myrmidon Grey because of his higher resistance, but we can still make use of Grey's low resistance by getting Arcanists to attack him, because Cliff needs to bait the Mire Arcanist in the northern group here, and if he got attacked by a Miasma guy, he would be at really low HP, which we don't want. So it's pretty useful that Grey is able to bait one of the Miasma guys away from Cliff. We also have Lucas in range of one of the Miasma guys to bait him as well. The reason we need to bait the Mire Arcanist this turn with Cliff is because that triggers the boss group to move, and we really need the boss to start running over to us so that we can actually kill him on turn 3. Silk warps over Tobin so he can Excalibur the Mire guy, but before that, we have to set up our formation for turn 2. It actually looks really precarious for some of our units like Tobin to survive this enemy phase here, because after taking a Mire from the boss, they'll die from a miasma of one of the generic arcanists. But we actually have a way to mitigate that, and that way is Forsyth. Forsyth is deceptively really good in this map because he has really a lot of HP for a unit that we didn't have to train at all, and he doesn't die to a combination of Mire and miasma, which is really important because the boss will go for him the boss moves first, and the boss will go for him, and then the miasma guys remaining could combine to kill Forsyth, but instead they go for Gray and Tobin, or they go for Gray because Gray has lower resistance than Forsyth. So that's going to be pretty useful. I didn't mention at the time it happened, but Tobin crits one of the Mire Arcanists with Excalibur. That's really the only unreliable thing in this clear. Otherwise, things are pretty good. We don't really even have to deal with forest tiles that much because of our enemy phase positioning on turn 3. Usually it's pretty hard to get the Mire guy to not attack from a forest tile, but it ends up working out for us because he goes for Forsyth. Lucas, Python, and Clive will combine to kill this Arcanist here. Clive is deceptively good on this map because he has a lot of attack and very good movement, meaning he can actually reach the Arcanist in the top right corner, which is hard for anyone else to do. And even though he has really low resistance, he has good HP, so as long as he doesn't enemy phase anything, he's pretty good at just taking one miasma and finishing off an Arcanist. We do have to turn wheel here to get the Arcanist to actually move towards Clive. Though turn wheeling for enemy movement, I've found, is actually pretty trivial as long as you can spare the turn wheels, which we can. I attack the Mire boss here with Excalibur and get a crit on him. I thought I needed to do this, but I could have just attacked him with fire twice with Tobin, and that would have allowed Gray to use Foudroyant Strike to kill the boss. I just didn't realize that Gray could get the kill with Foudroyant after Tobin used fire twice. That was a bit of a mistake on my part, but it just means the reliability on this map is better than I thought it was. Python finishes off the Arcanist here. This is the only kill that's kind of suboptimal in terms of EXP distribution, because Python's promotion isn't super important because he's not a main combat unit. Could have tried to feed this to Silk here, but couldn't really get it to work out. Maybe there's some optimization here to get more kills on units that need them, but EXP distribution ends up working out anyway, so it's not too big a deal. We also have Forsyth able to weaken one of the Miasma Arcanists, and he would be able to do this even if he didn't dodge the boss Mire Arcanist. So that's a really nice thing he's able to do. He sets up the kill for Faye, and that's actually kind of important because Faye can't get the rescue rank just on healing alone, even after grinding her to physics, so she does need some amount of kills. But yeah, she picks up the kill here and gets a level up from that, which is really nice. She doesn't need any more attack for the rest of the game, so we don't need to rig anything like that. She just needs 12 attack by the time she gets rescue at level 10, which is fairly reliable. And Cliff misses the last Arcanist, which kind of scared me because I had only had one more turn wheel left. But Cliff will get the kill on his second try, and that is 3-2, completed in 3 turns.
That was a little too close.
The next map here is kind of a weird one. It's going to be a lot shorter than the last 2, which is why I decided to throw it in at the end of this video, even though it's getting kind of long. We only have 3 enemies to kill, but they're all pretty strong. There are 3 paladins, well, 1 cavalier and 2 paladins, because Fernand sucks. But we needed a little bit of setup to one-turn this map. We first needed swap on Claire so that she can get Tobin in range to Excalibur crit Berkut. This Excalibur crit is really the only unreliable thing in this map, so we get to spend basically all of our turn wheels on it, making the one turn of this map pretty trivial. Cliff and Python weaken the generic paladin, who's actually pretty strong, so that Gray can kill him with the lightning sword. And next, we have to chip down Fernand a little bit, so we're going to warp Forsyth over to him and chip him down with the Rider's Bane. And because Fernand is right next to Berkut, Clive can then take the Rider's Bane from Forsyth and use it to knock out Berkut, as well as have it for enemy phase. Now, kind of a weird thing that happened is Fernand is going to attack Clive on this enemy phase, despite having much juicier targets in range. That's just because Fernand's AI will always target Fernand regardless of what happens. Even if there's an enemy he can kill in range, he'll still go after Clive. So that's why it's important for Clive to have the Rider's Bane for enemy phase. Gray will knock out the Paladin here, and disclaimer, this is not the original recording of this map, though the experience should be exact as well as the level ups. But you can see that Alm and Faye activate another support, even though they just did one in 3-2, which is kind of weird. That's because the original recording got corrupted, so I had to kind of jerry-rig this one. But that is 3-3 completed in one turn. Hope you'll join me next time for when we take on Desay's Fortress and do a bunch of forging. Alright, see ya.